Hey, Michael Hyatt here, New York Times bestselling author and founder of Michael Hyatt and Company. We help successful but overwhelmed high achievers, probably just like you, get the focus they need to win at work and succeed at life. And I want to talk to you for a minute about a leadership growth strategy that you probably haven't considered, or if you have, you probably haven't thought about it this intentionally or optimized it so you get the maximum value from it. Now, if you're like me, you probably grow by reading a lot of books, listening to podcasts, maybe attending a few conferences. Look, those are excellent growth strategies, but there's one thing missing. According to Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck, people who have a growth mindset believe they can improve themselves by their own efforts and strategies, and that's what I've described, plus input from others. And that means one of the best ways to grow as a leader is to ask questions of other leaders. I don't know if that's part of your growth strategy or if you've thought about it or if you've been intentional about it, but let me start with this story. So probably more than a decade ago, Michael Smith, a friend of mine, called and asked if he could interview me. Now, Michael was on sabbatical from the position that he held at Clearview Baptist Church in Franklin, Tennessee. And so he asked to interview me on the topic of leadership. Now, I was thrilled. I was honored that he asked me. I was excited to contribute, and I also thought that's a really interesting strategy. So before the interview started, Michael shared with me that one of his growth strategies, one of the ways he wanted to grow as a leader, and one of his sabbatical projects was to interview as many leaders as he could in various professions. So again, I was honored. So what really impressed me, and I've never had this happen before or since, was the level of preparation that Michael had before our meeting. I mean, I've had lots of lunch meetings with people that wanted to pick my brain. They come completely unprepared. It ends up just being a gab session that may have some value, but frankly, I don't know what the value is. But Michael had great, thoughtful questions. So I printed that list out and I kept it with me so the next time I was with a leader I respect, I could pop it out and start interviewing. And I did that for years. The questions were so good that I asked Michael for permission to share them. I posted them on my blog, and I want to share them with you in this video. So here are the questions. I'm going to give a little commentary as I go through this. So question number one, are you ready? You're probably going to want to take some notes. Can you name a person, and again, you're asking this of a leader, can you name a person who has had a tremendous impact on you as a leader? Maybe somebody who's been a mentor to you. Why and how did this person impact your life? Number two, what are the most important decisions you make as a leader of your organization? Now consider the fact that you can't afford, if you've got a growing organization, to make all the decisions, right? If you're going to do that, you're going to be a micromanager. Instead, you got to focus where you create the most leverage, where you add the most value, and that's probably a narrow band of questions. So a great question to ask other leaders, what are the most important decisions that you make as a leader of your organization? Number three, as an organization gets larger, there can be a tendency for the quote institution to dampen the quote inspiration. Am I right? You've probably experienced that. How do you keep that from happening in your organization? And again, this would be a question you would ask of another leader. How do you encourage, this is question number four, how do you encourage creative thinking within your organization? I mean, innovation, creativity is the lifeblood of any organization. You got to keep the new ideas coming. So how do you as a leader encourage that within your organization? Number five, where do the great ideas come from in your organization? Are they kind of within a department? Are they located in one or two people? Or are you fostering that across the organization? I mean, it's to me just fascinating to ask other leaders where it comes from in their organization. Number six, which is most important to your organization? Mission, core values, or vision? And I think all of us would admit that they're important, but this is one of those questions where there's no right or wrong answer, but it's interesting to get inside the thinking of another leader to see how he or she thinks about it. Number seven, how do you or other leaders in your organization communicate the core values? Now, I think you'd have to agree. It's not enough to come up with core values. It's not enough to hang them in the lobby of your office. No, you've got to communicate them within your organization. And it's fascinating to discover how real leaders do that inside their organization. Number eight, and very similar to number seven, how do you encourage others, not just you, but others in your organization to communicate the core values. It can't just be your job as the leader. It's got to be everyone's job in your organization if you're going to create a culture that's based on your core values. Number 9, do you set aside specific times to cast vision to your employees and other leaders? Now, to be honest, I don't know of a lot of leaders that have a written vision, especially a vision script like I talk about in my book, The Vision Driven Leader. But again, it's an insightful question to ask. How do you set aside times, or do you set aside specific times to cast vision to your employees and other leaders? Question 10, how do you ensure your organization and its activities are aligned with your core values? Like, that's a whole other separate question about alignment that's critical to execution. Alignment is what connects core values to execution. And I thought this was a great question that Michael asked me, that I've asked other leaders, and it's a question for you to ask the leaders that you interview. Okay, so we're half done. Question 11, how do you help a new employee understand the culture of your organization? Fascinating, because if you're trying to create culture, and I would maintain that culture is the unseen force that drives operating results. So how people communicate that to new employees, that culture, is mission critical to their success. Question number 12. When faced with two equally qualified candidates, how do you determine whom to hire? Great question. Number 13. What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess? By the way, don't be tempted when you're asking these questions of other leaders to kind of fill in the space or the silence. Give them a chance to think about it, because they're not working from a script. They probably haven't had a lot of time to think about this. The value of it is you get what's top of mind and usually what's the right answer. Number 14, what is the biggest challenge leaders face today? What is the biggest challenge leaders face today? Number 15, what is one mistake you witness leaders making more frequently than others? Man, I mean, you can learn on your own experience or you can learn on the mistakes of others. So if you can get from really capable leaders what their value or what their view of this is, what's the biggest mistake leaders make today? It can be one less mistake that you have to discover for yourself the hard way, right? Okay, number 16. What is the one behavior or trait that you have seen derail more leaders' careers? What's the one behavior or trait that you've seen derail more leaders' careers? Man, I could fill a book with that. In fact, I've thought about writing a book about that. But that, again, is a good thing to know, because you don't want to let that derail your career. Number 17, can you explain the impact, if any, that social networking and Web 2.0, and that's probably not a term that we use today, maybe we're Web 4.0, I don't know, have made on your organization or you personally? So how is social networking? I mean, this is a powerful force. It was back when Michael interviewed me. It's even greater today. I mean, this is the soup in which we swim, right? So how is it impacting our organization, the way we communicate, the way we do business, etc.? Number 18, what are a few resources that you would recommend to someone looking to gain insight into becoming a better leader? I have discovered so many books, so many seminars, so many assessments, so many resources that I'd never heard of before, just by asking the question of really good leaders. Number 19, what advice would you give someone going into a leadership position for the first time? I love this question because, again, I want to give people a leg up. I want to give them a fast start, and I want to know what advice they would give to somebody who's in a leadership position for the first time, so that I could be more thoughtful in terms of giving that same advice to the people I'm trying to lead. Question 20, our last question. What are you doing to ensure you continue to grow and develop as a leader? And by the way, I asked this question of a very important, prominent CEO at a LeaderCast about a decade ago. I totally caught him flat-footed. And, I hate to say it, but he kind of had to admit that he wasn't intentional about his growth, which I thought was very revealing. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that gal. You want to be thoughtful about your growth and development strategy. So let me just encourage you not only to create a list of questions. Obviously, you can add to it. You can delete some of these. You can add additional ones. You can do whatever you want. But you might start by asking yourself these questions. Interview yourself. That would be a great exercise because it'll give you a basis of comparison as you begin to learn from the leaders around you. So thanks to Michael Smith for this list. Thanks to you for listening. I hope you found it helpful.